Your thought bubble comes from the pool of your emotions. Let me expand on this idea and this metaphor because this idea can help you break out of loads and loads of thoughts that you don't even want, loads of feelings about reality that you don't even want. So the metaphor that came to my mind was, imagine a pool of soapy water and you take a bubble wand and you dip it in that soapy water, and this soapy water represents your emotions, and then you blow bubbles, and these bubbles are representing your thoughts that come out of it. And so whatever emotions are in that pool are going to completely influence the thoughts that you have. And not only that, but they're actually going to make up the thoughts you have. So for example, think of a time where you just had a really good day. Maybe someone gave you some compliment, or maybe you met someone new that's exciting, or you just had a really good workout. Maybe you hit a new PR, or you just graduated, or you just got an A on a test or 100% on the test. Something good happened to you, and as a result you have a little bit a chip on your shoulder, or you are a couple inches taller, or you're just a little bit higher vibration or a higher attitude, let's say. And I want you to notice what kind of thoughts occur when you're in that state of consciousness, when you're feeling those cheerful emotions. Generally, you're going to have more thoughts around conquering your challenges. You're going to have more positive perception about yourself. You're going to have more positive perception around other people. All of that. And you already know. Likewise, for any other emotion, if you are angry, you are going to have angry thoughts around yourself, other people. You're going to start demonizing other people. You're going to get angry at the world. And the more dangerous ones is if you're sad or depressed. Then next thing you know, all your thoughts are going to be around being depressed. You're going to actually filter reality through that depressed emotional system, and you're going to start seeing yourself as helpless. You're going to start seeing your situation as helpless. You're going to see your own capacities diminish, and your attitude towards managing challenge is going to go into the toilet. And what's dangerous is then you get stuck in that state, and then you're just dopamine fishing, where you're scrolling all day and you're making poor choices, eating bad food, you're not going out, you're not working out, you're not talking to people, you're not going to work, you're not volunteering, you're not being active, meeting other people, and you're isolating. One of the worst things you can do when you're depressed is isolate. And your thoughts, just like this analogy where that pool of your emotions, your thoughts are constantly pulling from the current pool of your emotions. And it's amazing to see how this happens to everyone, and how most people aren't actually conscious or even aware that this is happening. It's also really incredible to see where someone who has really, really heavy emotions, where they have, they're really depressed, or they're really happy, they're not even aware that their thoughts and their ideas are completely tainted. They're completely colored by the pool of their emotions. And you can see someone who is manic, who is like really, really happy, and they can start to get delusional. They start to get, because they just feel so good, they just self-reinforce themselves. They're like their own yes man. Or someone who's really depressed, really suicidal. There's no way out. The world just shrinks. And this is where it's most dangerous. I mean, it's also dangerous on the other side because you can make really foolish decisions, just thinking every idea is a good one. But also when you get so depressed and for so long, you don't even realize that your depressed thoughts, the ideas that you're not good enough, the ideas that, well, I did this and this, but it didn't mean anything. That is the very process of your depressed mood filtering your reality, reinterpreting your past, reinterpreting your identity through this pool of emotions that you're currently experiencing. So even as a rule for yourself, never start reviewing your life necessarily when you're in this depressed state of consciousness. That's a pretty general rule, and it may not be the most, airtight idea, but hopefully you understand what I mean when I say that. What if you started to review your life when you're feeling really good? Take a day where you start feeling really good and then take a moment to journal about your life and reflect on who you've become and your capacity to overcome adversity and challenge and how that's influenced your decision making and your identity. How often do we self-reflect when we're in a good mood? I know for myself, I'll self-reflect when I'm in a terrible mood and I have nothing else to do but to self-reflect. And it's very common, when you're depressed and you're not talking to other people and you're isolated, you're just stuck in the whirlwind of your thought. They take a really bad day. Maybe you got a rejection from a job, maybe from a dating prospect, maybe you had a breakup. And notice how crappy that feels, and then how much you're like, oh, I'm just a complete loser. And these are just all thoughts coming from your emotional pool. And so I would like to invite you to open up your awareness, open your mind to realize that, wow, like what emotions are coming from, what emotions do I have and how is that influencing my thought right now? How am I actually constructing these thoughts? Or better yet said is, how are these thoughts constructing themselves, being grounded in this emotional system? What you end up finding is that you're not even thinking. Thought is actually a mostly unconscious process, especially you got that monkey mind happening there. Yes, you can participate in the thought process, you can have direct contemplation into things, but very few people do that. Most of the time, we are just experiencing these thoughts. We're experiencing these patterns of thought in our mind, and then they'll get unconsciously filtered through all of our emotions. You'll reinterpret your relationships based on these emotions. You'll reinterpret your sense of self, your identity. You'll reinterpret your goals. You'll reinterpret your motivations. Your entire attitude towards reality will be reinterpreted based on the pool of your emotions, especially if you start actually believing the thoughts that come out of this pool of emotions. So next time that you have loads and loads of thought that's not serving you, recognize that those are just thoughts coming from the pool of the currently held emotion within you. Oftentimes, I will find myself, I'm the kind of individual where when I'm in a negative mood, I will start to think and I will try to problem solve because I'm trying to create a sense of control. When really, the only thing that I need to do is to do some emotional processing, is to let go or work through or sit with this emotionally difficult feeling. Process the anger. Use some Sedona method with really watching the whole emotion and letting it flow through me like a superconductor of emotion. Using bilateral tapping, pulling in some breath work, shamanic breathing, Kriya yoga, or simply just sitting with it. Sitting in the chair and setting the timer for 20 minutes and doing nothing. Sitting still like a statue and just watch. watch the anger come and manifest itself in its full glory. And then eventually it fades completely. If you haven't experienced this yet, I highly recommend doing this. It's a combination of do nothing technique and strong determination sits or strong determination sitting. It's very self-explanatory, right? Set the timer for 20 minutes and do nothing. Even just stare at one point on the wall and just notice your thoughts and don't even move. Put your hands on your legs and just exist. Don't do anything. And watch, especially if you're experiencing anger, like right in the middle of anger, do this, where you just make a vow to yourself to do absolutely nothing for 20 minutes and just watch it run through your mind and dissipate. And you realize, like, holy crap, that was just thoughts coming out of a temporary state of emotion. And as you do techniques like this more and more, and as you become more mindful, and as you zoom out of your perspective in reality a little bit more, you start to realize how illusory all your thoughts are, how illusory reality is constructed from your pool of emotions. And so what is funny then is life is no longer a game of thinking necessarily the right thoughts. The right thoughts will come with the right emotions. Life becomes more of a game of emotional mastery. If you can really get yourself in a state where you're not experiencing such low lows and you're not becoming so angry, you're not getting so triggered, then you're going to have less and less thoughts that are going to poison the well of your mind. And next thing you know, these thoughts and identities that have been grounded in years and years of angry ideas, angry thoughts, angry perceptions, depressed thoughts, depressed perceptions, those thoughts will fall away and new neutral to positive ones will come online. And next thing you know, you have a completely different attitude towards life. Something bad happens to you. Guess what? You're not going to interpret it through that negative lens anymore, or not nearly as much. It's incredible to watch this. I've been let go from jobs, and I've watched myself being like, okay, there's something better for me waiting. I remember that thought process was introduced to me from Wayne Dyer. There was a moment, he was talking about this on one of his recordings around people. He was going to do an interview, and everyone in that studio got let go that day. Everyone was fired that day, and people were moping around all sad, and it was like, oh wow, like this is terrible, like my life's a mess and I just lost my job. And then Wayne Dyer was like, congratulations. And the guys are like, what do you mean? I just lost my job. What do you mean congratulations? Like, he's like, no, congratulations, because what do you really want to be doing? It's like, well, I really want to be writing an opera. It's like, well, and like, why didn't this guy write an opera if that's what he really wanted to do? It's because he was going into the radio station every day to not pursue what he really wanted. And so just a little on this little tangent here, to notice the doors that don't open for you, the doors that slam shut right in your face, and to reinterpret that. If you don't have an anger towards it, if you don't have a depression lens towards it, if you don't have a me, and victim state of consciousness towards it, if you're not self-absorbed and you're actually just open to what does this actually mean. It's the whole parable around the Chinese farmer, where, the story is this Chinese farmer, good and bad things happen to him, and his neighbor is like, oh, that's very good, or oh, that's very bad. And every time the Chinese farmer is like, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. and just being able to withhold judgment from what you're experiencing, from what's happening. And that comes from having a less negatively emotionally charged system, having more of a emotionally stable equilibrium. Then you won't have these negative thoughts that are completely washing your perception and completely messing up your even ideas of your self-efficacy. How powerful you think you are and how powerful you think you want to become is based on what you're feeling on a day-to-day basis. Because what you're feeling on a day-to-day basis is going to color how you interpret things, how you think about things, how you think about yourself, and how you think about other people. And everything else. That's why now emotional mastery is making a lot of sense to take seriously. At least for myself. Because I'm like, damn. There'll be moments where my brain chemistry is just low. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to believe any thoughts that are occurring within this emotional state of consciousness. Because they're probably going to be dog shit. If I think about myself or if I start reinterpreting my accomplishments. Like, for example, I finished a 7-month life coaching program. Some of the best training in the world. And in a depressed state of consciousness, my brain was like, yeah, but like, it didn't really meet your standard, Christian. You could have had way better training, and you kind of got conned and scammed on it. Like, it's like, wow, what a dickish move to kind of pull on myself with my thoughts. It's like, whereas, a more positive state of consciousness was, look, you remember when you first went in to that training. When you first went to your training, you knew that you didn't know if that training was going to be the cat's meow or not. And in the end, you put a lot of work into it. You put 500 hours of study into it, and you learned a lot. And look how good of a life coach you are now. Look how confident you are now with being able to facilitate clients through whatever problem. You now have a skill where you can coach someone on anything because you have the structure completely understood. You have these models to help you. You have these additional tools to help you. You are now more equipped to be a life coach than most people. You are as professional as it gets. Of course, there's more things I could do, and of course, experience will be the ultimate thing that makes me more and more competent. But look at how much more of a positive lens that is, rather than just throwing it away. You knew there was going to be some good and some bad, and being able to just separate the wheat from the chaff, and look how much you learned, and look how much you focused, like you really cared. No one else put the same amount of effort as you did, and it showed. You put hundreds and hundreds of more hours than other people. And it showed when you knew the models like the back of your hand. You understood the literature like the back of your hand. You were right up there with the instructors. In fact, in some of the models, you knew a little bit more because you had more thought about it. Look how much more of an empowering thought process that is. Or let's talk about, I'll give another example. Whether it's, and I'll try to make this one really relatable, is like maybe you'll find yourself in a lull in life. Maybe you just finished schooling. Maybe you just got out of a job or got out of a relationship or something. And now you have a lot more time on your hands and you're not quite sure how to spend it. And then maybe it's not spent just being busy all the time. And then, when you're in that depressed state of consciousness, it's like, man, I'm just such a lazy sloth. Like, look at me, I can't even get my life together. My room's a mess, and this and that, and I don't even get myself to exercise or eat right, and I'm just playing video games all day, or whatever it is. Like, you're just stacking the reasons as to why you're not good enough, and to why you're broken, and to why you don't deserve the success you want, and that you are actually not good enough, and like you're not important, and all that stuff. Now, imagine now being in a much more positive and a power state of consciousness and reinterpreting it through a, let's say, higher vibration, right? In a more expanded lens, in a more compassionate lens. It's like, look, you've been through a lot, and busyness doesn't determine your worth. And in fact, you slowing down is exactly what you need. You really sitting with your thoughts and your emotions is what you need. You being able to take some time to slow down and to really think about what's important, not just jumping into the next rigmarole, not just jumping on the next bandwagon, but actually taking some time to think, what's most important for me? What's going to be most fulfilling for me? That takes courage. Sitting with not knowing, maybe not knowing what to do next, maybe not knowing what's the best thing for you. That takes courage. See, look at that thought, look at those comparisons in that thought process, just with that example. And oftentimes, these thoughts come from how we're feeling. And emotions and thoughts, they work interchangeably. They work together. They loop together. You'll feel negative, and you'll have negative thoughts, and those negative thoughts will make you feel more negative, and then it just loops back and forth. Not realizing that's what's happening. Not even being conscious that that's what's happening. You're just victim to your own system, your own thoughts, your own emotions, the system that's your body. Rather than being in an inspired state of consciousness and having a positive thought and feeling good about that, and because of that, you unlock more ability to have more positive and more optimistic thought. Unlocking more avenues, opening your mind just a little bit more. I hope you can really understand the power of this idea, of really understanding of how all your thoughts are grounded in the pool of your emotions. Contemplate for yourself how your life would change if you had less feelings of overwhelm, because those feelings of overwhelm are going to feed into your thoughts. Contemplate how having more positive moments and then thinking about your life in those positive states of consciousness, how that will empower you more. And this is, of course, a journey you take on of systematically doing one thing after another to correct your emotional system. Whether it's, you have a meditation practice, a Kriya Yoga practice to rewire your mind, your nervous system, your emotions. Doing some trauma work. And all the techniques with that. Forgiving others. There's beautiful exercises. There's one on how to forgive others who've hurt you, something along those lines, from Leo on actualize.org. It's a beautiful exercise, and there's so much trapped emotion in our resentment to other people. And that anger we hold on is just holding on to a hot coal, thinking that it's going to hurt them, but it only hurts us when we hold on to that resentment. So when we can forgive others, we can stop feeling the pain that we're self-creating. When we can let go and fully process our past through somatic therapy techniques or psychedelic therapy or writing about your past, let's say the self-authoring program, really processing what happened to you, all these emotions and stories that haven't been looked at. You're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, and you haven't even taken a moment to sit sit and be like, how did I get here? Not to reflect on your life. All of these things are going to help you to rewire that whole emotional system. And when you rewire that whole emotional system to a more favorable position, you're going to have more favorable thoughts. And you're going to have a more favorable outlook on yourself and other people and your life and your capacities. This is a little side note. It's kind of funny. As someone who puts a lot of thought into how people heal, it's weird seeing other people that clearly need to heal, and you know how to heal them, or what they need to do to heal themselves, and the only thing that's stopping them is their level of openness. How open is their mind? So just a little side note there, how open your mind is to taking this idea about emotional mastery seriously and how it influences your whole life. How open you are to this will determine how seriously you take it. What's the attitude that you have towards it? And how much you're going to be like, are you just going to listen to the next thing? Or are you going to take a moment and, sit with a journal and be like, how can I actualize the understanding from this lecture, from this lesson? How can I connect that to my life? How can I get it such that, what new actions can I take? What do I need to do to improve my emotional system? How can I become more conscious of this process? Of my thoughts being fed from my emotional system. So, yeah. With that, you can clearly see how passionate I am about this, because in this state of consciousness, I'm very aware of just how powerful this is. When you have the truth, when you have serenity, when you have a calm state of mind, that's going to influence how you perceive everything. And when you can see everything correctly or through a more positive lens, your life starts to unfold in different ways, and you start to change. The way you be starts to change. So, with that, thanks for watching.